Well, we all know the news already. Back in August, it was revealed in a LinkedIn post by Volition that the studio was being shut down. Quote, this past June, Embracer Group announced a restructuring program to strengthen Embracer and maintain its position as a leader in the video game industry. As part of that program, they've evaluated strategic and operational goals and made the difficult decision to close Volition effective immediately. And yeah, that's it. Just a month after celebrating their 30th anniversary, the studio was shut down in the blink of an eye. Honestly, considering everything that's happened, this news still came as a shock. I mean, I wouldn't have been surprised if this news came off the heels of the reboot's release, but a year later and after Volition became a subsidiary under Gearbox? Man. And I know a lot of people have pointed to the reboot as the sole reason for the studio's closure, but that isn't exactly the case. See, as it turns out, Embracer Group is a quite incompetent company. They would go and buy up every possible studio under the sun without considering the budget needed to keep all their new assets running. So to make up for this negligence, they reached out to Saudi Arabia's Savi Games Group to make a deal to receive a $2 billion investment. However, this deal fell through back in May, leading to Embracer's frantic restructure and the demise of Volition.
So enjoy the games.
You didn't have to cut me off.
Of course, you could argue that if the reboot was a larger success, the studio would have been less likely to be axed. But was the reboot truly a financial failure? According to Embracer, despite the game not meeting their quality standards, it did financially perform in line with management expectations. Now that could honestly mean anything since the sale figures were never publicly shared, and attempting to research those numbers can be quite confusing. From what I was personally told, the reboot's launch performed just behind the sales of Saints Row III. Keep in mind that the third was the best earning game in the series, with 4 times the pre-orders of Saints Row 2 and selling 5.5 million copies in a year. The bigger concern at the time was the sales following the game's release. Quote, the real question now is if we'll sell the same as other Saints Row games. We've always had a weak launch with a long tail. If that doesn't hold, then it'll be a lot more scary 6 months out. After those 6 months, I was told the game was doing just okay. Nothing great, but nothing worrisome either. So the game did perform well enough. What kept it from being more positive was the ballooning $100 million budget from the troubled development. So I genuinely don't believe the reboot was the primary reason for Volition's fate. Besides, Embracer wouldn't have gone through the effort of moving Volition under Gearbox if it was always their intent to close the studio. Embracer was simply so desperate to cut costs, and still is. Are you fucking kidding me? Fuck you, Embracer! Fuck you! In all likelihood, Volition was just a cost-effective choice since they'd yet to start development on a new title. We know from Volition's previous video editor, Josh Stinson, that the studio was closed while they were still in the pitch phase for a new game. We can only wonder now what those ideas could have been. And I know the question a lot of you are probably thinking, what does this mean for the future of Saints Row? Well, it was revealed in a Discord AMA that the IP would remain with Volition's previous publisher, Deep Silver. So it's up to them if they want to continue the series, and from what I've heard, they're still fairly interested. I even heard rumors a while back that the publisher was looking to outsource a new Saints Row back to Volition since they already had the tools and foundation set to make a sequel. Though, since they're now shut down, that means Deep Silver would have to find another studio if they wish to continue the franchise. And since whoever they find would have to start from scratch, the earliest they could see a new game coming is 4 years, if at all. Now, I know the true #1 burning question you're all thinking. What about the Saints Row movie? Nah, I'm just kidding. I'm pretty sure that idea quietly died 2 years ago. Anyway, as for the fate of the Saints Row 2 PC patch, I wish I had a definitive answer. I know people close to the project want to keep it alive, but ultimately, it's up to the higher-ups at Deep Silver. Prior to Volition's closure, I was told the publisher was in deliberation on whether or not to finish the patch and what the budget would be if they decided to do so. Now chances are even more slim unless they can contract the ex-Volition devs needed to help finish the project. It's just a damn shame. The development hell the patch has gone through deserves its own hour-long video, but above everything, the idea that Mike Watson's hard work might go to waste, it just pisses me off. Like Flippy, I too was a part of the patch team, testing new builds and reporting glitches. We saw firsthand just how much passion Mike had for the game, the community, and how much he wanted everyone to enjoy Saints Row 2 as intended. He continuously worked on the project up till 2 weeks before his passing, only stopping when he physically couldn't continue. So I pray Deep Silver decides to put forward the resources needed to finish it. If not for Mike's sake, at the very least to regain some goodwill from the community. Finally, there's just a few things I'd like to say about Volition and clear up a few misconceptions. For one, I know a lot of people's feelings for the studio changed after their comments on Twitter. More specifically, the notorious haters gonna hate fiasco. Well, you might be surprised to learn that none of those comments came from Volition. In fact, it was Deep Silver who's been running Saints Row Social since before the reboot's announcement. So yeah, that doesn't make the comments any better, but for what arguably caused the biggest divide among fans and casual gamers, Volition shouldn't get all the blame for it. And this would be far from the only thing the publisher has done to screw over the studio. I wanted to save some of this info for my NDA video, but screw it. For a decent portion of the reboot's development, Johnny Gat, Dex, Shondi, Pierce, and Aisha were all going to be the main Saints in the game. Hell, Mike Watson was even in charge of making a mission where you would finally kill Dex in a proper fashion. They had the 2080 rule where the game's tone was going to be 20% Saints Row III and 80% Saints Row II. This would have allowed the game to have occasional over-the-top moments, but still have a grounded story with impactful moments. Volition initially set out to make a game that would satisfy both the old and new school fans. Though as time went on and Deep Silver kept nudging Volition in a new direction, the studio realized their concept wouldn't be compatible with the publisher's vision. So the old Saints were scrapped, the story was changed, and we ended up with a bland, corporate, and unsatisfying experience. Now, not to put the blame entirely on Deep Silver, from what previous Volition devs have expressed online and from what I've been told over the last 2 years, the higher-ups of the studio constantly made development problematic. From butchering the combat, cutting countless finished features, and demanding constant changes to the story, it's no wonder that employees were leaving on a weekly basis. At the end of the day, we can either dwell on Volition's final blunders or remember the studio for their decades of beloved games that are still enjoyed even now. It's only a shame they were never given the opportunity to redeem themselves. From what I was told, the studio had quite a promising future under Gearbox. The entire reboot writing team, gone. The upper management who's been screwing over the studio since Agents of Mayhem, gone. Their publisher being based in the States instead of overseas meant more precise communication. No more monthly 50-page reports with demands that overestimated the studio's skill. I even heard that Randy Pitchford wanted to increase the size of the studio so teams could develop multiple games at once. Though sadly, we'll never know what a post-reboot Volition could have achieved. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video. I'm sorry that this video took so long. A lot of personal nonsense unexpectedly came up, but things have finally settled and content should be picking up soon. And yes, the NDA video is still 100% coming. The little info I shared today is only scratching the surface of what that day entailed, and I'll be doing my best to get the rest told as soon as possible. And before ending today's video, I need to give a super special thanks to my Patreon sponsors. John, Sam Just, Big G, Gabriel Snyder, Fluffy Tail, Pokedex, David Snoopy, EMC Mend, Javier Rivera, and Ascendant Dude. Like always, thank you for watching, and go have some fun on your favorite Volition game, for old time's sake.
AJTS says this is an 8 out of 10. What do you think, Godzilla?
Well, I haven't finished it yet. Right now, I'm gonna give it a 9 out of 11.
Yeah, he can say that. He can say that, but I can't.